Princess Lyra of the Zenthari stood at the edge of her sleek, silver spacecraft as it hurtled through space. Her mission was clear: to broker peace between two warring factions on behalf of her people. The Zenthari were known across galaxies for their intelligence and stoic nature, but Lyra carried an additional burden. She was royalty, expected to lead by example and uphold the rigid emotional suppression that defined her species. As she navigated the vast expanse of stars, a sudden flash of light filled the cockpit. A violent solar storm had erupted without warning, disrupting her ship's systems. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and Lyra fought desperately to regain control. But it was no use. With each passing second, the ship spiraled closer to a distant blue planet, Earth. The impact came swiftly. Trees splintered and dirt flew as the spacecraft skidded into a dense forest, leaving a trail of destruction behind. Lyra groaned, her body aching from the crash. Smoke filled the air inside the cabin, and sparks danced around her console. Struggling to stand, she activated her personal force field, a shimmering barrier designed to protect her from harm, and stepped out into the unfamiliar world. The forest was alive with sounds she had never heard before. Birds chirped melodiously overhead, leaves rustled in the breeze, and somewhere nearby, water trickled over rocks. It was chaotic yet strangely beautiful. Lyra scanned her surroundings, unsure if this planet posed any danger. Her scanners indicated life forms nearby, but they appeared primitive compared to the advanced civilizations she knew. Just then, movement caught her eye. From behind a cluster of trees emerged a figure, a human male wearing rugged clothing and carrying a backpack. His name was Alex Carter, a park ranger who had been patrolling the area when he noticed smoke rising above the canopy. Startled but curious, he approached cautiously. "Hey there," Alex called out, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "Are you okay?" Lyra tilted her head, studying him. She couldn't understand his language, but his tone was gentle, non-threatening. Slowly, she deactivated her force field and took a step forward. Alex froze momentarily, taking in her appearance. Her skin glowed faintly under the sunlight, and her eyes shimmered like liquid gold. She looked otherworldly, yet somehow fragile. Alex pointed to himself and said, "Alex." Then, gesturing toward her, he raised an eyebrow questioningly. After a moment's hesitation, Lyra mimicked his gesture, placing a hand over her chest. "Lyra," she replied, her voice melodic and soft. Though communication was limited, Alex quickly realized she needed help. He offered her water from his canteen, which she accepted after a brief pause. As they walked back toward his cabin, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something about this human was different. There was warmth in his gaze, kindness in his actions, qualities she hadn't encountered among her own kind. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt confused. Why did this stranger make her feel safe? And why did her heart, or whatever organ-regulated emotion in her body, beat faster whenever he smiled? Little did she know, this encounter would change everything for both of them. The calm that Lyra and Alex had found in the forest was shattered once again when Kel's sabotage of the Zenthari communication systems failed. Torek, furious at the delay, traced the interference back to its source and led his team straight to Alex's cabin. The hum of their ship descending through the trees sent a chill down both Lyra and Alex's spines. This time, Torek wasn't alone. A group of heavily armed soldiers accompanied him, their weapons trained on Alex as they emerged from the vessel. Lyra stepped forward immediately, positioning herself between them and Alex. Her glowing eyes burned with determination, though her heart raced with fear. "Enough," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tense air. "You will not harm him." Torek sneered, taking a step closer. "You disgrace your title, princess, associating with primitives, defying orders. What would your parents say? What would Commander Valen think?" At the mention of Valen, Lyra flinched but quickly masked it. She wouldn't let Torek use guilt or obligation to manipulate her. My duty is to learn and grow, not blindly follow outdated traditions. She shot back, surprising even herself with her defiance. If you take me now, I will never stop fighting for what I believe in. Alex, standing just behind her, clenched his fists. He didn't fully understand everything being said, but the hostility in Torek's tone was unmistakable. "Listen, buddy," he interjected, stepping forward despite the pointed weapons. "She doesn't want to go with you. Isn't that enough? Why can't you leave her alone?" Torek's expression darkened. "Silence, human," he barked, raising his weapon slightly. Before he could act further, Lyra raised her hand, her voice ringing out clear and commanding. "No," she shouted, turning to face Alex briefly before addressing Torek. "If you harm him, you'll destroy any chance of peace, not just with Earth, but within our own people. Is that what you want?" Her words struck a nerve. Torek hesitated, his grip tightening on his weapon as he processed her challenge. For all his rigidity, he couldn't deny that Lyra's actions carried weight. As a princess, she represented more than herself. She embodied the future of the Zenthari. Exiling, or worse, harming her would have consequences far beyond this moment. Seizing the opportunity, Lyra pressed her advantage. "Let me stay, for now," she continued, softening her tone slightly. "I will study humanity's ways and report my findings to the Council. This isn't rebellion, it's diplomacy, a cultural exchange." Torek glared at her, clearly skeptical, but unwilling to escalate further. After a long pause, he finally lowered his weapon. "Very well," he growled. "But know this, princess. If you fail, you will face exile, and no one will stand with you then." With that ominous warning, Torek signaled for his team to retreat. The ship ascended into the sky once more, leaving behind an eerie silence. Lyra exhaled deeply, her legs trembling beneath her. She turned to Alex, who looked pale but resolute. "You really stuck your neck out for me back there," Alex said, his voice tinged with awe. "Are you sure about this? Staying here, you're risking everything." Lyra nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Yes, because for the first time, I feel like I'm living, not just existing. And I owe that to you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the forest, Lyra realized something profound. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for a future where love and understanding transcended worlds. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth every risk. The moment the Zenthari ship disappeared into the clouds, Lyra sank to her knees, overwhelmed by the weight of what she'd just done. Alex knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Hey," he said softly, his voice steady despite the chaos that had just unfolded. "Whatever happens, you're not alone in this." Lyra looked up at him, her glowing eyes filled with gratitude and fear. She knew Torek wouldn't hesitate to follow through on his threat of exile if she defied her people again. But more than that, she feared losing the fragile connection she built with Alex. For the first time in her life, she felt truly understood, and walking away from that felt impossible. "We need more time," Lyra whispered, her mind racing as she tried to come up with a plan. "But I can't do this alone." Alex nodded firmly. "Then we'll figure it out together." Later that evening, Lyra decided to take a risk. She activated her hidden communication device, a small palm-sized gadget embedded in her suit, and sent an encrypted message to Ensign Kale, one of the crew members aboard the retrieval ship. Kale was younger than most Zenthari officers, often questioning their society's rigid rules. If anyone could help her buy some time, it was him. Within hours, Kale responded. His holographic image flickered to life in the dim light of Alex's cabin. He glanced nervously over his shoulder before speaking. "Princess Lyra, I assume this channel is secure." "It is," Lyra replied, keeping her voice low. "Kale, I need your help. Torek won't give me much time before he reports back to the Council. Can you delay them? Cale hesitated, clearly torn between loyalty to his superiors and sympathy for Lyra's plight. Finally, he sighed. I believe what you're doing is important, even if the others don't see it yet. I'll sabotage the communication systems temporarily, but you must act quickly. Once they realize what I've done, there will be no turning back. Thank you, Cale, Lyra said, relief washing over her. I won't forget this. With Cal's assistance secured, Lyra focused on making the most of the extra time. Over the next few days, she and Alex explored every corner of the forest, sharing stories about their worlds. Alex taught her how to climb trees, skip stones across a river, and identify constellations in the night sky. In return, Lyra showed him glimpses of Xanthari technology, holographic maps of distant galaxies, tools capable of analyzing plant DNA, and even a device that translated bird songs into musical notes. One evening, as they sat side by side under a canopy of stars, Alex played his guitar again. This time, Lyra joined in, humming softly along to the melody. Her voice blended beautifully with the music, creating something neither of them had experienced before. It was a perfect harmony, a blending of two vastly different worlds. Yet even amid these joyful moments, Lyra couldn't shake the looming threat of Toric's return. She knew her actions would have consequences, not just for herself but for Alex as well. The thought of putting him in danger terrified her. You really care about this place, don't you? Alex asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. And about you, she admitted quietly. I never expected to feel this way, but now that I do, I don't want to lose it. Alex smiled, squeezing her hand gently. Then we'll fight for it. Together. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Lyra felt a spark of hope. With Alex by her side and Cal's help, maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to bridge the gap between her world and his. Alex's cabin was small but cozy, nestled deep in the forest where he spent most of his days. It had a wooden exterior, with ivy creeping up its sides and smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Inside, shelves lined the walls, filled with books about nature, wildlife, and survival skills. The air smelled faintly of pine and freshly brewed coffee. For Lyra, it was an entirely new experience, one that felt both foreign and strangely comforting. As they entered, Alex gestured for her to sit on a worn-out couch near the fireplace. He disappeared into the kitchen area briefly before returning with a first aid kit. Pointing to her arm, which bore a shallow gash from the crash, he raised his eyebrows questioningly. Lyra hesitated at first, but then nodded, allowing him to tend to her wound. Alex worked carefully, cleaning the cut with antiseptic wipes and wrapping it with a soft bandage. Though she winced slightly at the sting, Lyra found herself watching him intently. His hands moved with precision, yet there was something gentle about his touch, something that made her feel safe. She couldn't quite put words to it, but this sensation was unfamiliar and intriguing. To communicate, Alex resorted to gestures and crude drawings on a notepad. He sketched a spaceship-like shape and pointed to the sky, clearly asking how she'd arrived here. Lyra smiled faintly, appreciating his effort. Using the same method, she drew planets and arrows pointing downward, trying to explain her crash landing. Their exchange was slow and awkward, but it sparked a sense of connection neither of them could deny. Over the next few days, Lyra stayed at Alex's cabin while secretly working on repairing her spacecraft. Each night, after Alex fell asleep, she would sneak outside to inspect the damage using tools hidden within her suit. Her advanced technology allowed her to make steady progress, though she knew time was running out. Still, being around Alex kept distracting her. She noticed things about him, how he laughed softly when reading a funny passage from one of his books, how his eyes lit up when talking about the animals he protected in the forest, and how patient he was despite the language barrier between them. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Alex pulled out his guitar and began playing a soft melody. The sound was unlike anything Lyra had ever heard. Rich, flowing, and full of emotion. She leaned forward, captivated, her glowing eyes wide with wonder. When the song ended, Alex looked at her expectantly, unsure if she'd enjoyed it. Lyra placed a hand over her chest, mimicking the gesture humans use to express gratitude. "Beautiful," she said slowly, testing the word she learned earlier. Alex grinned, clearly pleased, and played another tune just for her. But beneath her growing fondness for Alex, confusion lingered. Back home among the Zenthari, emotions were suppressed, seen as weaknesses that clouded judgment. Love, joy, even curiosity. These were all considered irrational distractions. Yet here she was, feeling things she couldn't control. Why did Alex's presence stir such warmth inside her? Why did she find herself wanting to stay longer, even though every logical part of her screamed to leave? Late one night, as Alex slept soundly in his bed, Lyra stood outside under the stars. Her mind raced with questions. Was it possible that humans, despite their apparent simplicity, possessed something her people lacked? Something essential. As much as she tried to push these thoughts away, they refused to fade. Instead, they grew stronger, gnawing at her resolve. For the first time in her life, Lyra realized she didn't have all the answers, and oddly enough, that scared her more than anything else. Months passed, and Lyra's reports began to ripple through Zenthari society in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her descriptions of human emotions, love, compassion, joy, challenged centuries-old beliefs that had long governed her people. Younger generations, inspired by her courage, started questioning the rigid suppression of feelings enforced by their elders. Quiet debates turned into open discussions, and for the first time in history, whispers of change echoed across Zenthara. Back on Earth, Lyra finished writing her final report, her hands trembling slightly as she sealed the encrypted message. It was time. She knew her parents would come personally this time, not just to retrieve her, but to see for themselves the life she had chosen. The thought filled her with both excitement and dread. One crisp morning, the familiar hum of a Zenthari ship broke the stillness of the forest. This time, however, it wasn't General Torek who stepped out. It was her mother and father. Queen Elindra and King Solon stood tall, their regal presence commanding respect even in such an alien setting. Their expressions were unreadable, though Lyra could sense the weight of disappointment behind their stoic masks. Alex stayed close by her side, his presence a silent show of support. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he trusted Lyra enough to let her take the lead. When her parents' eyes landed on him, there was no mistaking the disapproval in their gazes. But Lyra refused to back down. "Mother, father," she began, bowing slightly out of respect. "Thank you for coming." Queen Elindra inclined her head, her voice steady, but tinged with sadness. "We came because we needed to see this human who has stolen our daughter's loyalty." Lyra winced at the word stolen, but Alex stepped forward bravely. "I haven't stolen anything," he said firmly, meeting the Queen's gaze. "Your daughter made her own choices, and I think she's happier now than she's ever been." The King's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Lyra interjected. "He's right. I chose this path because I finally understand what it means to live, not just exist. Humans have taught me that emotions aren't weaknesses, they're strengths. They connect us, inspire us, and give meaning to everything we do." Her words hung in the air, heavy yet hopeful. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, unexpectedly, her mother sighed and looked around at the lush greenery, the sunlight filtering through the trees. "This place is beautiful," she admitted softly. "It reminds me of home when I was young, before duty demanded so much of us." Lyra's heart swelled. She saw a flicker of the woman her mother used to be, the one who once dreamed of freedom before responsibility took over. Slowly, she reached out and took her mother's hand. "We can find balance, Mother. We don't have to abandon logic or tradition, but we can embrace emotion too. Together, we can build something new." Her father remained silent, his expression guarded, but when he glanced at Alex again, there was less hostility in his eyes. Finally, he spoke. "If you stay here, you will face challenges. Are you prepared for that?" Lyra nodded without hesitation. "Yes, because I'm not alone." Moved by her conviction, her parents reluctantly gave their blessing. They agreed to allow Lyra to split her time between Earth and Zenthara, serving as an ambassador between the two worlds. It was a compromise neither side had expected, but one that offered hope for the future. As her parents boarded their ship to return home, Lyra watched them go with tears in her eyes. Then, turning to Alex, she smiled. A genuine, radiant smile that lit up her entire being. Hand in hand, they walked toward the horizon, ready to face whatever lay ahead. For the first time, Lyra felt truly free. And as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, she whispered, "Thank you for showing me what it means to feel." Together, they stepped into a new chapter, one where love transcended planets, cultures, and boundaries, proving that connection could bridge even the widest gaps. Days turned into a week, and Lyra found herself slipping further into a rhythm she hadn't known before. Mornings began with Alex brewing coffee, a bitter drink he insisted she try, and afternoons were spent exploring the forest or working on her ship in secret. Each moment they shared deepened her understanding of human behavior, but it also left her increasingly conflicted. One afternoon, as they walked along a narrow trail surrounded by towering trees, Alex stopped abruptly and pointed to a pair of deer grazing nearby. Their movements were graceful, almost hypnotic. Lyra watched them intently, marveling at how peaceful they seemed, when one of the deer suddenly bolted, startled by a distant sound. Alex chuckled softly. "They get scared easily," he explained, though he knew Lyra wouldn't fully understand. He mimed fear by widening his eyes and clutching his chest dramatically. To his surprise, Lyra nodded slowly, repeating the gesture back to him. "Scared," she murmured, testing the word. Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant, as if saying it aloud made her feel vulnerable. Alex smiled warmly. "Yeah, scared, but they're okay now." Lyra glanced at him, her golden eyes searching his face. She wondered what it must be like to live without fear, to move through life unburdened by doubt or hesitation. Among the Zenthari, emotions like fear were seen as flaws, signs of weakness that needed to be eradicated. Yet here was Alex, openly acknowledging it, even laughing about it. It baffled her, but in a good way. That evening, as they sat together by the fire, Alex handed her a small, leather-bound journal. Inside were sketches of animals, landscapes, and even a crude drawing of her spacecraft. He flipped to a blank page and handed her a pencil, encouraging her to draw something herself. Lyra hesitated at first, but eventually sketched an image of her home planet, a glowing orb surrounded by shimmering rings. Alex studied it carefully, then pointed to himself and shook his head, indicating he'd never seen anything like it. For the first time, Lyra felt a pang of longing, not just for Zenthara, but for the simplicity of this moment. There was no judgment here, no pressure to conform. Just two beings sharing pieces of their worlds with each other. But the more time she spent with Alex, the harder it became to ignore the strange sensations bubbling within her. Her heart, or its equivalent, raced when he smiled at her. Her skin tingled when their hands accidentally brushed while passing tools or food. These feelings weren't logical. They served no purpose in her mission or her duties as a princess, and yet they persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. One night, as Alex slept, Lyra sat outside, staring at the stars. Her mind churned with questions. Why did humans value emotion so much? How could they function when their decisions were clouded by feelings? More importantly, why did she care so deeply about what Alex thought of her? Back home, she had been promised to Commander Valen, a high-ranking officer chosen for her by her parents. The arrangement was practical, designed to strengthen alliances within the Zenthari Council. But now, thinking about Valen filled her with unease. He was cold, efficient, and utterly devoid of warmth, the perfect match for someone like her, or so she'd once believed. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lyra realized something unsettling. She didn't want to go back. Not yet. Not until she understood these strange, wonderful feelings Alex had awakened in her. And that realization terrified her more than any solar storm ever could. With Toric's reluctant agreement, Lyra began her self-imposed mission to study humanity, a task she approached with both excitement and trepidation. Each day brought new discoveries, challenges, and emotions that tested her resolve, but also enriched her understanding of life beyond logic. Alex became her guide, introducing her to the rhythms of human existence. They visited bustling markets where vendors shouted cheerful greetings, hiked to serene mountain peaks bathed in sunlight, and attended small-town festivals filled with laughter and music. At first, Lyra observed these experiences like an outsider, analyzing them through the lens of a diplomat gathering data. But as time passed, she found herself drawn into the moments, letting go of her analytical mindset and simply feeling. One evening during a local fair, Alex convinced Lyra to try riding a Ferris wheel. As they ascended high above the ground, the world below transformed into a tapestry of twinkling lights and vibrant colors. Lyra leaned forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ride. Alex grinned, watching her reaction. "Told you it'd be worth it." Lyra turned to him, her glowing eyes softening. "I've seen countless planets, Alex, but none of them have ever felt like this." She gestured vaguely at the scene around them. People laughing, children running, couples holding hands. Humans make beauty out of chaos. Her words lingered between them, unspoken yet profound. For all their flaws, anger, fear, jealousy, humans created something extraordinary. Connection. It was messy and unpredictable, but it gave meaning to their lives in ways Lyra had never imagined. Yet embracing humanity came with its own struggles. Lyra often wrestled with guilt over leaving her family behind without explanation. She missed her mother's quiet wisdom and even her father's stern lectures. Late at night, when Alex slept soundly beside her, she would stare at the stars and wonder if they still thought of her, or if they believed she had abandoned them entirely. There were also moments of doubt. What if the council rejected her reports? What if her efforts to bridge two worlds only widened the gap? These fears weighed heavily on her, but Alex always seemed to sense when she was troubled. One rainy afternoon, as she sat by the window staring at the droplets sliding down the glass, he handed her a steaming mug of tea. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the universe," he said gently, sitting beside her. Lyra managed a weak smile. "Sometimes it feels that way." He placed a comforting hand on hers. "You're doing something incredible, Lyra. Don't forget that. You're showing your people what it means to feel. And maybe one day, they'll see how powerful it can be." His words reassured her, but they also reminded her of the sacrifices she'd made. She had walked away from her arranged marriage to Commander Valen, a union meant to strengthen alliances within the Zenthari Council. Though she no longer felt bound to him, she couldn't ignore the ripple effects of her decision. Would others suffer because of her choices? As weeks turned into months, Lyra continued sending detailed reports back to Zenthara, highlighting humanity's capacity for love, creativity, and resilience. Slowly but surely, her words began sparking change. Not overnight, but in subtle ways. Younger members of her species started questioning the strict emotional codes they'd been taught, inspired by Lyra's courage to embrace vulnerability. Through it all, Alex remained her anchor. He taught her how to laugh until tears streamed down her face, how to cry without shame, and how to find strength in moments of weakness. Together, they proved that love wasn't about perfection. It was about growth, acceptance, and trust. By the end of her stay, Lyra knew she had changed forever. She wasn't just a princess or a diplomat. She was someone who had learned to live fully, deeply, and authentically. And though her journey was far from over, she faced the future with hope. For herself, for Alex, and for the worlds they now shared. The peace Lyra and Alex had built together shattered one crisp morning when the skies above the forest lit up with an unnatural glow. A low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. Lyra froze mid-step as she recognized the sound. A Xanthari retrieval ship descending through Earth's atmosphere. Her heart sank. She had hoped for more time, but her people were nothing if not efficient. Alex noticed her sudden tension and followed her gaze upward. "What is that?" he asked, his voice tinged with alarm. When Lyra didn't respond, he grabbed her arm gently. "Lyra, what's happening?" She turned to him, her glowing eyes clouded with worry. "My people," she said simply, pointing to the sky. Though their communication was limited, Alex understood enough to realize this wasn't good news. Moments later, a sleek silver vessel descended into the clearing near Alex's cabin. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the sunlight in dazzling patterns. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and out stepped General Torek, a towering figure clad in polished armor. His stern expression left no room for doubt. He meant business. "Princess Lyra," Torek barked, his voice sharp and commanding. "You are relieved of your duties here. Return to the ship immediately." Lyra straightened, instinctively falling into the formal posture expected of her rank. But instead of obeying, she hesitated. Her gaze flickered toward Alex, who stood quietly behind her, watching the scene unfold with growing unease. Torek's eyes narrowed. "What is this, human?" he demanded, his tone dripping with disdain. "Have you compromised our mission by fraternizing with primitives?" "I helped her," Alex interjected, stepping forward despite the obvious intimidation factor. "She crashed here, and I took care of her. She's done nothing wrong." Torek's lip curled in disgust. "Silence, primitive. You have no place speaking to me." Lyra winced at the insult directed at Alex, but quickly masked her reaction. For a moment, she felt torn between two worlds, the rigid discipline of her people and the warmth she'd found with Alex. Then something inside her shifted. She couldn't let them treat him this way. "She stays," Lyra said firmly, surprising even herself with her boldness. "I will not leave yet." Torek stared at her, disbelief etched across his face. "You dare defy orders. Do you understand the consequences of your actions?" Lyra swallowed hard but held her ground. "Yes, but I also understand that there is value in what I've learned here. Value you cannot see because you refuse to look." Torek's hand twitched toward the weapon at his side, but before he could act, Alex stepped between them. "Hey, back off," he shouted, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his stance. "If you want to take her, you'll have to go through me first." For a tense moment, no one moved. The air crackled with tension as Torek glared at Alex, clearly weighing whether eliminating the human would be worth the trouble. Finally, he scoffed and lowered his hand. "Foolish sentimentality," he muttered. Turning back to Lyra, he added, "Consider this your final warning, princess. Delay any longer, and you will face exile." With that, Torek signaled to his crew, and they retreated into the ship. As it ascended into the sky, leaving behind only silence, Lyra exhaled deeply, her legs trembling beneath her. Alex turned to her, concern written all over his face. "Are you okay? What did he mean by exile?" Lyra shook her head, unable to answer right away. All she knew was that she had made her choice, and now she would have to live with the consequences.